in 1949 and 1950, I went to school called James Monroe. He's one of the early presidents of the United States. And sitting next to me was a little Jewish kid named Stanley Milgram. And Stanley Milgram was the one, as a kid, he was saying, you know, could the Holocaust happen in America? Could me and my family be sent to concentration camp? And other kids say, Stanley, don't be stupid. We're not that kind of people. And I remember I can hear his voice saying, how do you know what you would do until you're in the situation? I'll bet they thought the same thing, you know, when they saw other kids doing bad things. And then he was the one in 1962 and 3, he devised the most dramatic, unethical study ever done, in which young men, well, men ages 20 to 50, not students, were put in a situation where they were encouraged to give electric shock to someone else who was trying to memorize information. And the cover story, the big lie was, we want to see if punishment improves memory as well as reward. So that was the big lie. And the point was, in front of the teacher was a big shock generator with 30 switches, and the authority was in a white lab coat. He was really a biology high school teacher, but the white lab coat and so he's telling you, if you're the teacher, that your job is to deliver shocks of increasing intensity each time your student makes a mistake. And it begins with 15 volts, which there's no reaction. But then it goes 30, 45, and so forth. When it gets to 100, the learner begins to yell and scream, hey, you know, this is too much. And then when it gets more, the learner says, I have a heart condition, I don't want to go on. And in every case, people are basically good. They turn to the experimenter in that white lab coat and say, I don't really want to go on, I don't want to harm an innocent person. The experimenter says, I'm sorry, you have a contract. You took your money, it was $5 in those days. You must go on. So people dissent verbally, but the important thing is, what do they do behaviorally? 65% of these men went all the way to 450 volts. When it gets to 375 volts, there's a scream and silence. And you see people say, hey, are you okay? And silence. At that point, if you step back, you're a grown man. You're supposed to be helping improve somebody's memory. He's unconscious. So everybody should quit at least then. And everybody who gets to 350 goes all the way to the end. The most dramatic thing is, before Milgram began his study, he interviewed 40 psychiatrists at Yale Medical School. He said, what percentage of American citizens would go to 450 volts? They said, on the average, only 1%. How wrong could they be?
Because 1% is sadistic.
Yeah, sadistic. In fact, it wasn't 1%, it was 65%. And so his study was now.
What does that say about humanity?
Well, it says we have less free will than we believe. We'd like to believe my decisions come from within inside of me. I'm not influenced by other people. I'm not influenced by mass media. But in fact, that's a lie. Who we are is, in part, what we are surrounded by. Who we are is what our friends think. Who we are typically is what politicians think. Who we are is what the anchor of the TV programs that we watch often. So in America, if you watch Fox News, the more you watch it, the more right-wing Republican you'll be. Right. If you watch other kinds of news, the more likely you are to. So you begin to watch something that fits some of your beliefs, and suddenly their views become yours.
And we're capable of evil deeds.
And much more capable.
And most people walk around and think they are not evil.
No, most people think they're good, and in fact they are. But say, you know, when
they're not.
When I focus on nurture rather than nature. You know, especially when I talk with young kids, most people are really good. They're kind. They want the best from other people.
Right.
But then, you know, you put in poverty and you see the income equality. You see, you know, why can't my father get a job when this kid's father, you know, who's less smart than my father, has a great job, he has a connection, and so, and again, for a lot of us, there's the ugly sins of jealousy, of envy. You know, rather than saying, "Hey, if somebody's got something good, then I should figure out how did they get that job," And for me, it was, I don't need any of that. All I need is a good education. So that what drove me to not only get educated, but to love school, to love doing homework, to be a teacher's pet, from kindergarten through graduate school.
And two things about this shock experiment is, one that I noticed is this incremental change. You don't ask anyone to start at 400 volts.
No, and nobody would.
Right. And yet, and it's the incremental, and you could say this was the same as the rise of the Nazi Party.
Perfect.
Is the reason why. And you had an authoritative figure that removed your responsibility a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So he's telling you what to do.
Right.
But really, but this authority is really taking away your moral conscience. And why are you doing it? He told me to do it. He told me so. Now you could quit at any time, obviously. And so Milgram's study, now the other thing about Milgram's experiment is it was the first one publicly judged to be unethical. Now, if you read the article he wrote, you would not be concerned at all. It's only because he was the first researcher to make a movie. He wanted to be actually a documentary filmmaker. So he made a movie called Obedience, and you could see
the shocks,
the anguish in the people saying, come on, say, please get it right, please get it right. And then they get it wrong, and they're yelling and screaming. And you could see the anguish, and they're turning to the experiment and say, I really don't want to go on, you must go. So it was.
And the shocks were real?
No, the shocks were not real.
Okay, but
So that's the important thing. The person being shocked, your student, was a Confederate, pretending. He was actually in another room, pretending. It was a script. There's to keep everything the same, there was like a recording of yelling and so forth.
Okay.
But the bottom line is, and at the end of the experiment, you were introduced to the guy, and he said, "Oh, you weren't shocking me," but still you felt guilt because you thought he was getting shocked, and you kept doing it.